What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bond Armory. I'm Ray Crumpold, and today's episode is actually inspired by my 3-year-old daughter. Today we're going to be taking a look at the AGM 12 Bullpup missile. So there's a lot of craziness going on in the world right now, and it kind of dominates the news. And something very historic happened last month that might have gotten overlooked by some people. For the first time in nearly a decade, 2 American astronauts launched from U.S. soil in an American-made space shuttle to dock with the International Space Station through the SpaceX program. This was very exciting for me and my family because we're kind of obsessed with space. And nobody's more excited about it than my 3-year-old daughter, who, since she was like 1.5, memorized all the planets in order. She loves everything to do with space. Nice clear nights we'll break out the telescope and we look at the different planets and things. It's a lot of fun. And one of the things that me and her both share in common is a love of rocketry. Now, I'll put the rockets together, she'll give them a crazy paint job, we'll head to the park on a nice day, and we'll launch a couple over and over again, and she absolutely loves it. As much as I'd like to get my hands on a real Bullpup missile, that's not going to happen, so I thought today we would put one together. This is a model kit by Estes. This is the Bullpup 12D. This is the old one that we've launched quite a bit, and you can tell there's some damage, a couple of broken fins, so I'm going to put a new one together for her. You may be wondering why we're talking about space and rockets on a James Bond weapons channel. Well, that's because this exact kit is the same one that was used by prop makers in The World Is Not Enough. You might remember the scene when Bond's in his BMW and he pops out the side that missile that launches and blows up the helicopter. That was the Estes 12D rocket kit. So I thought it'd be a fun little project. This is something that you can do from home. You can order these off Amazon. I think they're like 15 bucks, under 20. Takes maybe an hour to put everything together, give it a paint job, let it dry overnight, and then you have a really cool James Bond prop you could stick on your shelf. Or if you want to take it to the next level, you could slap an engine in it and launch it at your local park. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Okay, so the first thing you want to do after you open it is go over your parts list. Now, this is going to take a while, and I don't want the video to run too late, so we're going to fast forward through most of this. So the balsa wood fins that you see here, always hang on to your scraps, because if anything goes wrong or you crack a fin, something like that, you can always just trace it and then cut it out with an X-Acto blade. Now the first step is assembling your motor mount, and that's where the actual engine is going to go. If you're just putting this on a shelf, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if you actually plan on launching it, you want to make sure everything's nice and dry, use plenty of glue, and make sure it's secure. Rather than using a ruler or a tape measure when you're doing measurements on a kit like this, I actually recommend using measuring tape. It's flexible and you can get around the parts and give yourself a real accurate measurement. Be real careful when you're doing this step because it's really difficult to get that X-Acto blade into the plastic. Sometimes it's a little thicker than you'd expect. Don't want anybody to lose a finger building this model kit. You want to make sure everything's level, so just hold it down over some low grit sandpaper and just rub back and forth until it's nice and flush. Next step is the fins. Now this is actually pretty easy. All you want to do is make sure that they're all the same exact size or as close as possible. Just hold them all together super tight and just rub each side against the sandpaper. Now once you're done with that, we're going to start working on mounting the motor mount. They recommend using a tongue depressor and then putting the glue inside. I've tried that method, I did it here, and it works, but I like to have a lot of glue in there just to make sure everything's secure. So don't be afraid to stick your finger in there, you know, you're going to get a little dirty. Now while that dries, I'm actually cutting out the measurements for the body tube so that we know where all the fins go. This is a little bit tedious, but it's very important. Once you have all your markings, it's time to get ready to glue. Okay, you want to put a little bit of glue on the fin, hold it into place. Once it kind of just sits there and it's not sliding around, you may have to actually wiggle it around because it will start to shift a little as it dries. So just make sure you have it nice and straight on your line. Apply more glue, let it sit there and dry before you start working on the next one. And always go back and double check your work. Once you have your 4 fins applied, just double check them. I always put a little bit of extra glue at the very end just to make sure that it's super secure. That way if it does fall hard, it's not going to break anything. Like I said, a little bit of extra glue, and now we're going to work on the top fins. Now these go on the same way, same exact idea. You just want to keep making sure that they're straight on the lines, go back and double check your work, put each one on, then go back over with more glue. Okay, now this is the launch lug. If you're doing this as just a model, don't put that on there. Actually, a majority of this you can actually skip if you're just going to have a little shelf piece, but if you intend on launching it, definitely have to go through with all the instructions. Now this is the shock cord that attaches to the parachute and inside the body. It says just to stick the clay in there and pack it down with a pencil. That hole is never big enough for a pencil, so I always end up having to open it a little more. The final step is a paint job, and for this I'm using Krylon semi-gloss. Don't mind the 7-foot unicorn in my backyard. Once you do 2 to 3 coats, let it dry, and this will be the end result. What's up, everybody? We are heading to the park. Say hi, Ellie.
Hi.
Hi, what are we doing today?
We're going to the park to launch my rocket.
That's right. So the actual AGM is about 10 times bigger than the scaled down model. AGM stands for air-to-ground missile. So it's definitely a weapon. This obviously isn't a weapon. Ellie, where do rockets go?
Into space!
Into space, that's right. What planet are we going to at the end of the month?
Mars!
That's right. Where's Mars from the sun? How many planets away?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You were close. How about you name the planets?
Mercury, Venus,
Earth, and then what?
Mars!
Mars. And then where?
Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune.
You nailed it. Alright, so we're actually going to a school that's nearby. They're closed for the summer, obviously. They have a really big field. It's one of the important things you want to look out for if you're going to launch rockets. You want a nice open area, no trees. If there's too many trees, once the parachute deploys, it can get hung up and then you're going to lose your rocket. That's right, the park. You'll lose your rocket. You want to avoid people. You're going to notice we're going to try to do this 3 times if I should have enough engines for it. But the first engine is always for test flights. That way if something goes wrong, it's not going to go that high. But by the time you hit the final engine size, the biggest one, that's when it goes really big. So we are here. There's one other person. Let's go find a parking spot. Over there. All right, we've got our rocket all set up. I actually taped a USB camera to it. That's the reason that there's no decals on the rocket yet. I actually wanted to launch it first with this camera so we can get some cool footage. And once we get back, that's when we'll take it off and put the decals on. All right, so now I've got the engine in there. This is our first engine, which is the smallest. We're gonna launch this one, and then we're gonna move up to the bigger ones.
Daddy?
Yeah, sweetie.
Can I launch it yet?
Not yet. There we
But
go.
I am.
Okay. All right, bring the controller over here.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Push the button. Okay, watch it. All right, there's our test. Perfect. Test launch with an A8-3 single stage motor. Now we're going to kick it up. We're going to do the big motor now, Al. This is a C6-5. All right, do your countdown.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Push the button. Whoa. Oh no, that was a failure. Stay here, hang on, it's gonna pop. There's our stage. What happened there, Al?
It just fell.
Oh no.
It's
Oh, it did. Well, you know what the good news is? Daddy has another one of these at home.
I have bad news.
Oh no, what's the bad news?
It's not good news, it's bad.
What's the bad news?
It burned.
Just like any good secret agent, it pays to have a contingency plan, and unfortunately the AGM 12D suffered a catastrophic failure and would not be able to launch. But luckily, I had the Phantom Blue with us as well. This is an excellent rocket, and this is what we're going to use for today's launch. So there you have it, the Estes Bullpup AGM 12D model rocket kit. Man, I'm a little disappointed. I really wanted to show you guys this rocket in action because it flies beautifully. But at least you get to see, you know, what a rocket launch would look like, thanks to the Phantom Blue, which is an excellent entry-level rocket. This was bothering the hell out of me, and I had to know what happened, why it failed so bad the way it did. And I figured two things out. One of them was the nose cone. What you didn't see was that it's super humid out here in Maryland, and the day that I painted this, I started to get some bubbling and crackling going on. So I took it to work with me the next day to sand it down and give it another recoat of paint. It was so busy, I never actually got a chance to do that. And in the nose cone, there's clay to help weigh down the nose cone when the parachute deploys and give you a nice descent. Well, that clay actually melted and all shifted to one side. It wasn't evenly distributed. So that's probably why the rocket just shot off and did that quick little spin. The other issue was in the motor mount. Now, this is the only thing I could come up with, but this is the first model that I've done in a very long time where I actually used modeled cement. Normally I just use super glue, Gorilla Glue, something like that. It dries really fast, has a super strong bond, and I use a lot of it, so it gets on there real secure. So the motor mount had to have shifted down during the launch, and then when the deployment stage happened, it just melted the whole back end off of it. So that was disappointing, but like I told my daughter, I have another one of these at home. Like you saw at the beginning of the video, I have our original one, which I know works perfect. The only thing is, I'm just going to have to salvage some of the fins, pop it on this guy, and it'll be good to go. The other good thing is I never used the decals on this one, so I'll be able to use them on this one to make it more accurate. If you notice things like the black lines on the fins, in the film, there's actually 2 on each one as opposed to 1. So now I have the extras to do that. The only other thing to make it more accurate that I've noticed anyway is the U.S. Air Force. You don't want to put that decal on there. Other than that, yeah, I still love it. I was disappointed I didn't get to show it to you in action, like I said. But if you want to just put it together, like I said, there's a lot of those steps you could just skip, so you don't have to worry about anything like that happening. If you do want to take it to the next stage and start launching them, if you have kids, get them involved. It's an excellent way to get them into STEM, and it covers all the bases. You have your science, technology, engineering, mathematics. That's all taken into account when you're doing model rocketry. But things like this happen. Like Elon Musk says, space is hard. Well, that's about it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the Bond Armory.